In our headlines at this hour, South Korea is just a day away from its second attempt at putting satellites into orbit using its own launch vehicle. Nuri is scheduled to blast off on Thursday afternoon. Unionized truckers and the Transport Ministry sealed a tentative late-night deal, bringing an end to nationwide walkouts that threatened industrial hubs and ports. After celebrating its 9th anniversary, BTS has shared intentions to take a break from group work to focus on solo projects before coming back stronger together. Welcome. It's Wednesday afternoon, June 15th here in South Korea, and you're watching the Daily Report. South Korea's space launch vehicle Nuri is standing on its launch pad as final preparations are underway for the country's second attempt at putting satellites into orbit. Han Sung-woo has our top story.
It's finally D-1, and Nuri now stands fully upright, proud and tall on its launch pad at the Naro Space Center in Goheung, Jeollanam-do Province. Developed entirely in South Korea, the three-stage space rocket was moved 1.8 kilometers on a carrier vehicle Wednesday morning from where it was assembled to where it'll lift off for the second time on Thursday, carrying actual satellites into space.
The exact time of Nuri's launch on Thursday will be finalised at the Launch Management Committee meeting on the day of the launch after we analyse technical matters related to the launch pad rollout, Thursday morning's weather conditions and other situational and environmental factors.
The launch was postponed one day to June 16th due to strong winds and a bit of rain, which prevented the rocket's rollout on Tuesday. Addressing the press at the time, the Korea Aerospace Research Institute cautiously concluded they feel good about Nuri's chances on Thursday, with the weather forecast also in the rocket's favor.
We think it's highly likely the launch will be a success. Then again, there's no guarantee that unexpected variables won't pop up last minute, so we're not letting our guard down.
Even with the rocket now in place, last-minute checkups and operations from the umbilical tower still await. That includes setting up the electric cable that'll link Nuri to its control room, and connecting the rocket to the umbilical cables that will later provide it with fuel and oxidizer moments before tomorrow's takeoff. According to authorities, no mechanical issues have surfaced so far, so assuming all goes according to plan, the umbilical connections will be complete by Wednesday, 7 p.m. Han Sung-woo, Arirang News.
And while we count down to that historic moment, my colleague Kim Do-yeon in this next report shares with us the events that are expected to follow after Nuri's launch. To take a look.
43 minutes. That's how long after launch it'll take before the test satellite inside rocket Nuri reaches out to the scientists on Earth. Not in South Korea, but this first communication will be with the country's research station in Antarctica called King Sejong Station. It'll roughly be 100 minutes after the launch when the test satellite sends signals to the city of Daejeon in South Korea, where the Korea Aerospace Research Institute headquarters is located. After 12 years of development, one test vehicle launch and one full launch with a dummy satellite, it will only take this much time to know whether the launch is a success. But what would qualify the launch as being a success? The 180-kilogram test satellite as well as a 1.3-ton dummy satellite successfully being put into the target orbit of 700 kilometers above Earth. Then, for the next 7 days, continuous connection between the test satellite and the team on the ground. Once that stage is over, the test satellite has another objective. Inside are 4 small-sized satellites developed by university students in South Korea, which will be released into orbit each 2 days apart. The 4 universities being Seoul University, Yonsei University, Joseon University, and Korea Advanced Institute of Science and Technology. These 4 will have their own roles to observe the Earth and its atmosphere.
We're developing a 30-centimeter cube satellite to observe fine dust over the west coast of our peninsula.
The biggest objective is to receive GPS signals in space to measure the atmosphere.
University students, the nation's aerospace scientists, and private companies. No matter which South Korean organizations they belong to, they all have one thing in common: to make this launch historical. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News.
In other news, new sanctions will be sought should North Korea push ahead with a nuclear test despite warnings against further provocations. Now, this is according to South Korean Foreign Minister Park Jin speaking over in the U.S. Our Foreign Affairs Ministry correspondent Kim Da-mi reports.
South Korea and the U.S. will push for fresh UN sanctions against North Korea should the regime go ahead with its 7th nuclear test. Seoul's top diplomat Park Jin gave the warning on Tuesday, hinting that South Korea, the U.S. and their allies will slap on unilateral sanctions if necessary. Briefing on the latest talks with his American counterpart Antony Blinken, Park once again stressed the role of China in ironing out North Korea issues.
I particularly emphasized to Blinken that China's constructive role is crucial in resolving the North's nuclear issues and that we should communicate with Beijing strategically.
Seoul's push for unilateral sanctions appears as a clear warning to China and Russia, who vetoed proposed UN sanctions on Pyongyang last month. But according to an expert, such a plan may not go smoothly as expected.
The unilateral sanctions may work on North Korea and China if trade and interactions between the two are active. But that's not the case right now because of the COVID-19 situation in the regime.
The South Korean foreign minister then added that he and Blinken agreed on the importance of extended deterrence and the reactivation of the extended deterrence strategy consultation group at the earliest date possible. On the same day, a Pentagon official also stressed adjustments to U.S. military posture will be done in close consultation with South Korea and Japan.
Everything that we do as it relates to our responses, but also any adjustments we may make in our posture, will in the first instance be done in consultation, close consultation with the ROK.
However, Kyle did make sure to note that a final decision has yet to be made, highlighting cooperation between Washington and its allies will not be fractured regardless of actions taken by the North. Kim Da-mi, Arirang News.
Back in South Korea, the daily COVID-19 tally is hovering below the 10,000 mark for the second straight day on this Wednesday. Over 9,000 new infections have been reported, the lowest for a Wednesday in 21 weeks. Critical cases, that is, stand below 100, and the death toll remains in the single digits. Meanwhile, starting July 4th, for precisely 1 year, COVID-19 patients will be offered 60% of the minimum wage. The measure follows findings that show fewer than half of COVID-19 infected workers are receiving paid sick leave. Also on the local health front, authorities have shared their quarantine protocols for monkeypox patients as well as close contacts and plans for the import of necessary medication. Our Kim Ji-yeon has details.
South Korean health authorities are taking steps to prevent an outbreak of monkeypox in the country. The Korea Disease Control and Prevention Agency said Tuesday one of those steps includes introducing a system to prevent and treat patients and those they've been in contact with. Those that have been in close contact with an infected person will be divided into 3 categories of high, medium, and low-risk groups. Those that are in the high-risk group that have had sexual relations with a confirmed patient or are living with them could be placed in quarantine at home for up to 21 days. The virus is related to smallpox and can cause a range of symptoms, including headache, skin lesions, fever, body aches, swollen lymph nodes, and fatigue. Authorities said they're also trying to import a first batch of the monkeypox treatment tecovirimat. Next month, they'll help treat some 500 people.
We're taking steps to import the antiviral drug for 500 people during July. Those that have contracted monkeypox will receive treatment at the National Medical Center until their infectivity has dissipated.
Once monkeypox patients are admitted to the facility, they may have to stay until they're no longer contagious. The agency said it's currently in discussions with manufacturers to bring monkeypox vaccines into Korea. It's also working with the emergency services to implement effective response measures when transporting an infected patient. The KDCA is also working to work with animal-related agencies to prevent the spread of the virus via household pets or wild animals. Meanwhile, the country's environment and agriculture agencies have strengthened guidelines so that they can alert related ministries of unusual overseas imports of primates and rodents from the African continent. Kim Ji-yeon, Arirang News.
Unionized truck drivers are returning to work after a week-long strike. In a dramatic turn of events, truckers and the Transport Ministry sealed a tentative late-night deal on Tuesday. The two sides have agreed to extend the minimum wage system, which was set to expire at the year's end, and to maintain talks on expanding the system beyond the carrying of containers and cement to other cargo items. The Transport Ministry is also exploring the possibility of higher fuel subsidies. Meanwhile, the cost of the truckers' walkout in terms of logistical disruptions has been put at over $1.2 billion. The Union administration and the ruling People Power Party have pledged to ease business regulations to spur an economic growth led by the private sector and not by the government. During talks earlier on this Wednesday, officials described the current challenges facing South Korea as a serious economic crisis and stressed that deregulation is the key economic policy direction of the Yoon Suk-yeol administration. The government will also incentivize investments in future industries and startups by easing tax burdens. And among their priority tasks are curbing inflation and enhancing people's livelihoods. The U.S. Federal Reserve has started its June meeting and is widely expected to further raise its federal funds target rate in line with its commitment to curbing skyrocketing inflation. The question is, by how much? And to answer that question, I have Professor Shin Sang-yeop at Kyung-hee University live on the line. Professor Shin, it's a pleasure to have you with us.
My pleasure.
Right, so Professor Shin, how high is the Federal Reserve likely to raise its rate this time around?
Well, I think the possibility is very high. There was a report that the consumers' prices in the USA increased dramatically in May. Actually, it was increased by 8.6%, which was the highest one in the last 41 years. So on the part of the USA government to control the price increases, certainly they should increase the basic interest rates. I think FOMC, Federal Open Market Committee, would raise the basic interest rates by 0.75% this time. Currently, for your reference, the basic interest rate in USA is 1%. So after the decision made by FOMC, the basic interest rate in the USA is still very low, only 1.75%. So certainly they will decide to raise the basic interest rate this time by 0.75%.
Right, that is quite a raise, of course. And before I go into the impact of that particular raise, Professor Shin, how long, I understand this is going to be difficult, but how long does the Federal Reserve's commitment to such stringent monetary policy look to last?
I think considering the economic conditions, not only in the United States, but also global economy, I think the USA government will take such a stringent monetary policy for a while, until at least until the end of this year. There will be 5 FOMC meetings, including this one, which is scheduled to be held tomorrow. They will have 5 FOMC meetings. I think at each meeting, the USA government, FOMC, is likely to raise at least 0.5% basic interest rates. Why? Because then around the end of this year, the basic interest rate in the United States would be 3.75%, which is still less than 4%. So to control the price increases in the United States, certainly they will continue to take the very stringent monetary policy, I think.
Right, and staying with that, Professor Shin, how does the Federal Reserve's expected rate hike look to affect the Bank of Korea's future course of action?
Well, in fact, if USA government raised the basic interest rates, which means that the value of the USA dollar will be stronger. So on the part of the other countries, then they should have to, they wanted to maintain appropriate, acceptable exchange rates against USA dollar, because this is very important for their trade and for the economy itself. On the part of Korea, we are not exception. Certainly, for us, to maintain the appropriate exchange rate against USA dollar seems to be very important for exports. So the Korean government just tried to, Bank of Korea tried to increase the basic interest rate as well to maintain the appropriate exchange rate against the USA dollar, but not as much as the FOMC does. But according to the Bank of Korea government, higher-ranking official, they are considering take the so-called baby step. The baby step means they are considering raise the basic interest rate by 0.25%. This is very important. Why? Because if the Bank of Korea raise the basic interest rate too much, there will be a the negative impact on the Korean economy. There will be the negative factor on the Korean economic growth. So on the part of Korean Bank of Korea, they will raise the basic interest rate to some degree, but not much.
Right, and staying with what you said then, Professor Shin, so like you mentioned, raising rates is likely to push the US dollar to fresh highs against its major currency rivals, including the South Korean won. So how does that potential scenario look to affect South Korea's economy? Could you tell us a bit more about that?
Yes. The exchange rate change could give, it has two sides, which one is positive side, another one is negative side. The positive side is this. Well, if the value of the Korean won against the US dollar weakened, the Korean exporting companies could have more motivations to their exports because they could make more money, simply because of the exchange rate change. But I think this time we could not expect to get such a kind of the economic profits from our exports. Why? Because considering the global economy, well, I think demands for the Korean products could not be strong as we expected. What I mean is that 2 years, the pandemic induced the global value chain disruptions and the Russian invasion of Ukraine, and so those kind of things make the global economy in a bad shape. So even though the Korean the exporting companies want to export more, the demand for the Korean the products in the global market could not be as strong as we expected. But the other one negative impact is that there must be the high risks of the inflation, because when we import some raw materials, we have to pay more money. Then more money will be spent into the market, provide a market. Then because of this, the weakened Korean value against the USA dollar, there could be the higher risks of the inflation. So I think this is we will get more the negative impact from the weakening Korean currency value against the USA dollar this time.
Right, I see. And Professor Shinden, staying with inflation. So inflation is running high across the world while growth prospects are being slashed. But the central bank here in South Korea has dismissed the possibility of stagflation for South Korea. What are your thoughts?
Well, I think the stagflation is getting closer to us. The Bank of Korea officials said that, potential annual economic growth rate in Korea, they changed it. The potential average economic growth rate in Korea dropped to 2% from 2.7%. Because of this, 2% economic growth rate means to us is that we will not have the stagflation in Korea. But about this, the forecast made by the Bank of Korea, many experts, and including some international economic organizations such as the IMF, they have very negative perspectives about these kind of the analysis made by the Bank of Korea. So I think that we cannot exclude the possibility of stagflation in Korea, regretfully.
Right, I see. And now one final question before you leave us, Professor Shin. What are your thoughts with regard to the Union administration's economic agenda policy?
Well, in fact, the new government led by President Yoon, actually, they want to make every effort. I mean, they try to make every effort to help the private sector and the Korean the enterprises to be able to play the main actors in the Korean economy. I think it could be realized through the regulatory reform and tax reform. I think that will be very important. In the middle of the very unfavorable global market situation, one of the best ways for the Korean government is to invite the private sector and business entities in Korea to help or maintain sustainable dynamism in the Korean economy. I think that will be very important.
Right, I see. All right, Professor Shin, thank you very much for your time and your thoughts.
My pleasure.
Right, well, on that note, we end part 1 of the Daily Report. In part 2, we address the latest on COVID-19. See you in a bit.
South Korea's experience in tackling COVID-19 and introduced a Korean new Korean survivor of Japan's wartime sex slavery met with
extraordinary climate crisis and pledged to work with the EU to tackle the challenge.
The objective of its North Korea policy is
protesters gathering across the country to peacefully demand an end to hate and violence.
Arirang, what matters?
So good right now. Maybe I had a drink or two, but this somehow feels like it's forever. All my friends are here having fun and feeling good right now. Maybe this is forever. All my friends are here having fun and feeling good right now. Forever.
Welcome back. On Viewpoint today, we touch upon the latest developments with regard to COVID-19. I have Professor Kim Moon-gyu from Yonsei University with me here in the studio. Professor Kim, it's good to see you again.
Thank you for having me.
Right, Professor Kim, as always then, perhaps we could start with a few words about Korea's current COVID-19 situation.
Yes, we went through a few outbreaks, and now we passed the biggest one, Omicron outbreak. And I think it started from January in here, Korea, and we reached the peak in mid-March, reaching about 8,000 cases per million, and now it declined to 190 per million and still declining. It's a good news. And there's a recent report from our health authorities that they screen the antibody positive rates in our population. The total number is only about 1,600, so the number is not so big. But strikingly, the antibody positive rate is 95%. If it's all came from vaccination, it's good, but actually the natural infection is about 36%. So that means even though we vaccinate our population, some of them got infected by natural infection. So I think they're going to start an extensive study for antibody positive rate in our population. We believe that immunity against COVID-19 will sustain for at least 6 months to 12 months. But all this data came from the research about antibody titer. But as we all know, we have T cells in our body, and nobody can measure how T cell works, how long they works. We have a very preliminary data of SARS in 2003, and those patients who had that infection still have some immunity against SARS 2003 in their T cells. So actually, we don't know how long we're going to have immunity against Omicron. Some might be longer. So let's say if there's no more new variant, I'm very optimistic. But recently, I got a report. I saw a report about Paxlovid, which is a medication fighting against COVID-19. There is a rebound of viruses after we stop this medication. So anyway, there might be a new variant. We still have to be vigilant for all these conditions.
Right, we still need to keep our eye on it then. And beyond Korea, Professor Kim, Moderna says its booster targeting Omicron shows a stronger immune response than its original vaccine. Could you tell us a bit more about this?
Well, all the vaccine products are made against the original Wuhan strain. And Moderna, they started to make a new one. It works not only for the original Wuhan strain, but also for the Omicron. So actually, that vaccine is composed of 2 components, each for Wuhan strain and the Omicron strain. So that's the reason why they call it bivalent. And this is not the first bivalent vaccine they developed. This company is trying to improve it every day. And now it's on the phase 2-3 clinical trial. The total number of the cases are just 430 some cases. So it's a very small number. I think they need to go on further with a full-scale phase 3 trial. And if they have the same result with this preliminary data, it's promising. It's going to work for the original strain and also for the Omicron.
Right, so it's something we can look forward to then. Professor Kim, according to data by the US Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, since late February, boosted Americans appear to test positive for COVID-19 more often than those who were vaccinated but not boosted. Could you explain this finding for us?
It's a very complex question. I mean, we have to look at many things to explain why. So I would just give you some data they give out by the CDC in April. They checked the unvaccinated group. They checked the 2-dose vaccinated group and compared with the boosted group. So there are 3 groups. The first one, unvaccinated group, was infected about 188 cases per 100,000. And the 2-dose vaccination were far less, only 56 cases per 100 million. But strangely, the group who was boosted, so they got at least 3 shots. was 120, was about 2 times higher than the 2-dose group. So still, vaccination is working and it's preventing people from getting infections as we compare with unvaccinated group. But why the booster group having 2 times higher infection rate? So I'm going to give you 4 reasons, but as we have more reasons we have to tell, that means nothing is quite for sure. The first one, there might be some behavioral difference among those 2-shot groups and boosted group. So the people who got only 2 doses might have more careful about their behavior when they meet people, about hand washing or wearing masks. But the boosted group might mingle with people. They might have abandoned those prevention behaviors. So that's the second thing I can explain. I mean, Omicron is different from previous variants because they have a very, very high reproduction number. So that's the second explanation. The third one, the 2-dose group might already have infected with some kind of variants, Delta or Omicron. So they decided not to have the 3rd dose. So we have to look at the data.
So it's too early to make any judgments or draw any
conclusions. And the fourth one, how do we confirm that the patient is COVID-19 positive? If all the population is done by PCR, there's no argument. But suddenly we started to include the data collected by rapid antigen test. And there's a quite difference among those. So even though they say it's COVID negative, you don't know whether we repeat it with PCR, that patient might turn to be positive. So what is the meaning of the booster dose? I still believe that those booster group had benefits because we have a less hospitalization and less death. So compared to unvaccinated group. So people need booster shots, especially people with underlying conditions.
Right. And moving forward, Professor Kim, some health experts believe that COVID-19 patients with weak immune systems need to receive priority care because of the concern of new variants that you mentioned earlier. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, we have to remember that coronavirus is a RNA virus, and as long as the virus has a chance to replicate, it has a chance to mutate. And I said that I wish that no more new variants will emerge, but that's not true. It's going to emerge in the future, in the near future or far future, we don't know it, but it's going to emerge definitely. So healthy people have a strong immunity. They don't let the virus to replicate for a long time, only for a limited time, then we recover it. So virus is cleaned out. So virus have a less chance to mutate. But when the immune system is weak and compromised, they need a long time to fight against the virus, and sometimes they fail. So this virus have a long time to survive, and they mutated. RNA virus cannot mutate outside human cells. So you don't have to worry about that. So those immune-compromised patients need a special care. So if you have a patient suffering from COVID-19, we need to confirm that this patient is fully recovered and not giving out any new mutant, new variant. So health professionals should be very careful when they treat those patients under weak immune systems. And the patients also have to follow the instructions given by the doctors. Sometimes they say, it's enough, I don't want to have no more admission, or stop taking medications, but that's a very bad idea. So
it's a dangerous idea then.
Yeah.
Professor Kim, staying also here on the local front, on Friday, health authorities will announce the fate of quarantine for COVID-19 patients here in the country. Should the quarantine be lifted or kept, Professor Kim? Your personal views on that?
Yes. COVID-19 has many faces, but just I want to focus on Omicron. Omicron has, as I mentioned, has a very high reproduction number, and it's going to find out among the population who is not immune. And if the person is weak, I mean elderly, having underlying conditions, this person is going to get Omicron sometime in the future, even though they do their best. So I do believe that we need some degree of quarantine, and it will be dependent upon the population immunity, herd immunity, and so we need the results from a bigger size antibody test among Koreans, and that will decide the level of quarantine. And there are some special situations that need the minimum quarantine measures, like public transportations and nursing homes, and especially a family who has a person with high age or underlying conditions.
Right, I see. All right, I'm afraid that's all the time we have for today. Professor Kim, as always, thank you very much for your insights.
Thank you.
While celebrating their 9th anniversary, members of BTS also shared plans to go solo for a bit to allow for personal growth. Our Kim Bo-kyung has more on their plans.
The end of Chapter 1. It could be some time until we next see BTS all together. The global supergroup have decided to take some time apart. They said they will focus on solo projects, using the time to explore their own individual interests. The shock announcement came through a YouTube video posted on Tuesday while the group casually had dinner together to celebrate their 9th anniversary. The members agreed that they had a tough time thinking about how to express each member's identity within the group.
Just until On and Dynamite, I felt like I had things under control. But after Butter and Permission to Dance, I couldn't get the hang of what kind of team we were. The K-pop idol system itself doesn't give time for artists to mature because we have to keep filming and doing something. After doing all the hair and makeup, I don't have time to develop myself.
But members hinted that saying goodbye to Chapter 1 means it's time to start the second chapter. Though taking a break as a group, members will focus on solo projects, starting with J-Hope. Until now, the agency's policy has been focusing on activities done as a group, only allowing each member's solo works to be released as mixtapes, not official albums. But now that will change.
We will make our mixtape content as albums. Our fans already know that the mixtapes show each member's own content, and starting with J-Hope's, we will officially show each member's own tape. We are actually very late doing that.
Being apart could rather make us be together again, and I think now is the right time to do that. I believe Team BTS will be able to be more solid, and it is a great time and necessary step for BTS to get into Chapter 2.
Though details of when the members will start pursuing their solo careers haven't been revealed, many are expecting J-Hope to release an album this summer, given that he is going to be one of headliners at the Lollapalooza Music Festival. Fans showed their support for the decision through comments saying ARMY will stand no matter what direction BTS goes in. Kim Bo-kyung, Arirang News.
And Seoul is reportedly one of the world's 10 best cities to launch a startup firm. A report released on Thursday by global research firm Startup Genome shows Seoul's startup ecosystem ranking 10th with a value of $177 billion. Now, this is an all-time high performance for the city, up 6 slots from last year. The ranking is based on the number of startups, the amount of early-stage funding, as well as infrastructure, research and patent activities. Seoul especially excelled in terms of funding owing to an increase in venture capital last year. The report evaluated 280 cities across 100 countries from mid-2019 to late 2021. In San Diego, the city is hosting the world's largest biotech gathering that serves as a platform for evaluation, inspiration and partnership. South Korea's industry heavyweights are also in attendance. Our Ishihu reports.
South Korean biotech companies are taking part in the 29th Bio International Convention hosted by the U.S. Biotechnology Innovation Organization. The convention, held in person for the first time in 3 years, is taking place from Monday to Thursday this week in San Diego, California. A total of 1,140 companies are at the convention, with over 15,000 visitors expected to attend throughout the week. The Korea Trade Investment Promotion Agency, or KOTRA, is promoting South Korean biotechnology at the convention, and South Korean firms such as Samsung Biologics, Celltrion, SK Pharmteco, and Lotte Biologics are also present. The booth run by Samsung Biologics is based on the theme Infinite Possibilities.
Well, we're very excited to be at Bio International 2022, especially because it's the first real face-to-face event since Corona. And we're excited to meet with our clients, our partners, and really establish not only networking, but our brand presence as a global CDMO.
At the booth, visitors can see how biopharmaceuticals are developed, and they can use virtual reality to take a virtual tour of the Samsung Biologics factories. A sustainability wall also showcases the company's activities and plans to lead sustainable biopharmaceutical manufacturing. Visitors were impressed with such innovations.
There's really something new that I couldn't expect that Samsung was working with. I think it's the next stage of technology, isn't it?
Samsung Biologics saw its operating income increase by 83% in 2021 and will open its fourth factory later this year. That factory is a super plant where the development of cell lines as well as production of the final biopharmaceutical product can happen all at one place. It also has systems for the production of mRNA vaccines. 이시후, Arirang News.
A growing number of Korean families include four-legged friends. That being said, the question now is how accommodating is South Korea to this new family framework? Our Song Yoo-jin has that answer.
15 million. That's the number of pet owners currently in South Korea. With this number growing year by year, is South Korea pet-friendly enough to embrace pet owners and their furry friends? Owners say things have gotten much better than in the past, both perception and service-wise.
I think the perception towards pets has improved a lot. For example, people now ask for permission before they pet my dog. I feel that people are much more welcoming to pets.
I think it has become much better to raise a pet. Nowadays, there are a lot of cafes where pets are allowed and even venues like dog swimming pools.
As a pet owner myself, it was hard to find places for both my dog and me to enjoy when I first got him 8 years ago. But now I have a wide range of options to choose from. Now there are also cafes where both pets and their owners can enjoy delicious food and drinks. Yet there is still room for improvement, especially in terms of housing.
One of the biggest difficulties with raising pets in South Korea arises from most people living in public housing, like apartments. There are some animals that make sounds or are very energetic. Owners of these animals often face complaints and conflicts with their neighbors.
To solve this problem, so-called pet-friendly houses are being specially built across the country. They aim to create a comfortable living environment for both humans and animals.
There's a separate door that allows pets to freely enter the bathroom. Before, I couldn't open up the window because I worried that my dog's barking would bother other people. But in this house, ventilation is possible without opening the doors. I think it's very convenient to live with a pet here.
Currently, just over 10 pet-friendly residences have been constructed, including studio apartments, and houses, but more will come in the future.
Pet-friendly houses also take into consideration the animal's physical health and mental well-being, so I expect more of these houses will be built and serve a useful purpose.
Through these efforts, South Korea will become more pet-friendly in the future.
송유진, Arirang News.
Let's take a look at what's going on in the world now. Food assistance from the World Food Programme has been suspended for 1.7 million people in South Sudan. The programme's acting chief in the country blamed a funding shortfall of $426 million, which she says has seen half food rations for many of the food agency's beneficiaries ahead of the lean season's peak in July. Estimates by the WFP note that 8.3 million people, including 2 million women and children, are at risk of malnutrition. This comes as 3 years of flooding, drought and soaring food prices have negatively impacted South Sudan's food security, with the country facing its worst hunger crisis since independence in 2011. A Cambodian-American lawyer has been convicted by a Cambodian court on charges of conspiracy to commit treason. The court on Thursday convicted Terry Seng and 59 other defendants over their alleged links to opposition leader Sam Rainsy and his failed attempt to return from exile in 2019. Cambodian courts are believed to be influenced by the country's Prime Minister Hun Sen, still in power after 37 years. Seng has denied the accusations and called the trial a sham. She has been sentenced to 6 years in jail, similar to other defendants. Standing outside the court, dressed as a chained Lady Liberty, Seng said she wanted her arrest to be public. Archaeologists have revealed the discovery of 13,000 relics at the famous Sanxingdui ruins site in southwest China. A report on Tuesday said the discovery of gold, bronze and jade relics was made over the past 2 years across 6 sacrificial pits at the dig site in Sichuan province. Amongst the thousands of artifacts, a bronze box with a green jade object inside is one of the highlights, as it's the first such item seen by archaeologists. Excavations at the site since 1986 have unearthed more than 50,000 items, including goldware and cultural relics. With fuel prices surging in South Africa, one proposed alternative is a 3-wheel electric scooter. While the South African government and central bank have adopted fuel price intervention strategies to tackle these surging prices, the CEO of Green Scooter, Fesile Tlamini, has suggested his scooters could be another option. The 3-wheeled vehicles, which resemble tuk-tuks, are made locally. They can be charged using electric sockets, so they are practical as well as environmentally friendly. Since its launch in 2018, Green Scooter has sold or leased 60 of its vehicles. A New York court has ruled that an elephant at the Bronx Zoo must remain there as she's not legally considered a person. The ruling was made on Tuesday when the state's highest court voted 5-2 to reject a call by an animal rights group to release it. The group planned to move the 51-year-old elephant to a sanctuary, claiming that it was being illegally held in the zoo's 4,000 square meter enclosure. The court case focused on the legal principle of habeas corpus, a measure protecting victims against unlawful imprisonment, and whether it could be applied to intelligent animals. The operator of the zoo denied the imprisonment claims, saying that Happy and another elephant are being looked after. Matthew Ashley, Arirang News.
Good Wednesday afternoon. I hope you brought your umbrella today, as we're having scattered showers across the country, including on Jeju of up to 40 millimeters. It will bring a great relief for those who have been struggling with extreme drought. And the rain will be on and off, but will continue until tomorrow morning. So always keep an eye on your local weather forecast, as there could be some stormy conditions. And now it's dull and gray in Gohung, Jeollanam-do province, where the space rocket Nuri is already at its launch pad, getting ready for the blast-off. While tomorrow on the launch day, skies will clear up with slight winds, so let's hope everything will go smoothly as planned. Well, due to the rain, the air quality will be good, and it's going to be much cooler than yesterday. Seoul will see 23 degrees, and eastern regions will be even cooler, affected by breezy easterly wind. So please dress accordingly and stay warm. And we have another round of shower in some inland regions, and as we travel into the later part of this week, temperatures are on the rise again, hitting nearly 30 degrees. Now let's take a look at the worldwide weather conditions.
Those are the headlines for this Wednesday afternoon. Stay tuned to Arirang News for more. Thank you for now.